All right. Market updates. Let's look at several markets. So back to Bitcoin. As I've mentioned multiple times, fib extensions on the larger trend. We've pretty much hit 1.618 on the nose, right? So this was a very big move, and we've made this move from the breakout point right here, right? So you could see that there's a wick. We had a correction right on the nose. Obviously, other traders, other people are likely following along, perhaps taking some profit. So correction here is expected. If I look at the smaller time frames, it just looks like a little bit of a retrace and a pullback. Bit of similarity to what we saw here. And I'm not, even though we get corrections and pullbacks at 1.61 or whatever, I'm not necessarily just going to call tops. And I'm definitely not interested in just, trying to short it along the way up. So this has kind of made two waves thus far, but really it's that breakout point of 2000 that's very, very key, right? This breakout point, and this is just kind of review for some people, but this is a key breakout level, right? This breakout zone is the difference between healthy trend correction consolidation versus Bitcoin bubble. This is the line right here. We break this, and if once we break this, the acceleration point from here to here at 3,000 being another 50%, which will give the 1 month gains, turn it into a double, essentially 100%. Then we're definitely, once we break this, we're definitely in the parabolic bubble territory, right? But we don't know where the top would be if that did happen, right? It could be here, it could be here. You could say, oh yeah, 4,000 would be exact same measured move as the breakout from 260 up to 1,300 in 2013. So this would be the exact same measured move if we went up here, right? Is the volume so much lower than 2013 because there are many more exchanges? There's a couple of reasons. A, it's because there are many more exchanges, so the distribution. But B, the volume, they're calculating this volume right here based on Bitcoin volume, as in how many Bitcoins are being bought and sold. Well, obviously at the price of $2,000 a Bitcoin or wherever we're at, you're going to get a lot less volume with higher prices than you are at $200 Bitcoins, right? So it could also be that, a lot of people are also, perhaps people are hoarding too, Anyway, so I see two paths here. I see two paths. I see the potential for either a big correction, and then the logical thing after that would be a classical prior resistance turn support, establishing a support level here in this area if we had a major washout. In fact, this could even be a good dip buying area if that were to happen. That's the sane, logical thing for the markets to do. But just based on looking at altcoins, the markets are not sane or logical right now. The markets are in the frothing at the mouth, irrational, over exuberant bullishness phase, right? Especially with altcoins. Bitcoin hasn't had that yet. A 50% gain in a month is not exactly what I consider bubble territory necessarily, right? But it's got all the markings and signs of being able to get there. So you look at the 1 week candles, and these are still modest, right? Notice how the 1 week candles over here in 2013, notice how this 1 week candle right here in 2013 was larger than the size of the entire previous 2-year trend prior to this 1 week candle, right? So you can really kind of gauge the strength and the parabolicness of a trend based on the size of these 1 week candles, right? So if we were to go parabolic, I mean, these 1 week candles are getting bigger than any 1 week candles we've seen before. So these are the biggest 1 week candles we've seen, right? But if this is just a launch pad, we could just be, right in this area. If we broke this, then if we start to see 1 week candles that dwarf the size of the entire trend, like if I had if this were my 1 week candle right there, and I were to measure that against the entire trend, it would be bigger than the entire 2-year trend in 1 week. That's when the markets are going off the rocker and are hitting that bubble territory, and also that it's just a ticking time bomb from that point on, where the markets will have a mega dump and cause a lot of pain to people who piled in on top, a bunch of latecomers, and people who don't know how to trade and stuff will get wrecked by something like that, right? So the larger that shoots up vertically, so that's the kind of things that I'm just looking for right now. Ask me if I know if it's going to break out, or if it's going to correct back down, or if it's just going to go a little sideways. I have no idea. Technical analysis and trading isn't necessarily about needing to know exactly what's going to happen in the future. It's about understanding market behavior and being able to frame the market in a way that you have a plan and a strategy based on what the market presents to you, right? So obviously, if we start seeing these massive green candles like this on the weekly, or one massive green candle, then it's probably a good idea to start selling into strength. Selling into strength is like you sell into a strong market before it crashes, right? Sometimes after the crash, it's too late. I mean, you could get the bounce play, but so we'll see, right? And how high is high? Well, who knows? I mean, things, maybe you think that's high and then it goes up higher. Maybe you think it's there. Maybe, who knows? I don't want to get overly exaggerated with what the markets can do, but the reason why I'm presenting this is just to make people aware of some possible scenarios that we could see. Normally, when we're in bull trends, I don't necessarily make outlandish price predictions and targets like this. I don't start thinking in multiples of thousands. But this is a very special case because we've got a all-time high breakout from the overall 3-year trend, and also a huge cup and handle, right? You see here, big cup, and then a handle, touch this trend line, and then breakout, boom, right? So it's yet to be seen what happens. But my plan is I'm going to sell into strength at different levels up, like I mentioned, with the intent of getting 50%, selling 50% of my Bitcoin. Why would I do that? Why would I just take profit. Well, I would do that because my journey started for accumulating in this last round. It started down in this accumulation range, right? So that's why, right? When you start here, and then I traded all the way up, and 5 minutes to midnight, traded some altcoins, tripled my holdings, and now we're breaking out and going parabolic. Now, looking at some altcoins, it's interesting because you would think that usually Bitcoin breaks all the all-time highs. Every altcoins just, they bleed, and they bleed hard, and they just keep on dumping and dumping and dumping until they get all the way back down into low accumulation zones. That hasn't really been happening lately, so that's the normal sane pattern. But there's obviously a lot of new money in the markets. There's a lot of new money in the markets, and it's not automatic, right? It's not automatically dumping, although this looks very toppy to me, like a double top. I'm hesitant because, I mean, here's the thing. Because a lot of these markets are beyond irrational and over exuberantly bullish, and a lot of altcoins, I'm actually very hesitant to just short. I haven't really been doing a lot of shorting lately, even though prices are up so high, and for good reason. You think something's looking exhausted and topping out, and then it pushes up and it makes another move, right? So when you got markets moving up this high, I mean, Ripple's a perfect example. Ripple's a perfect example of this, right? I mean, this move alone in all normal circumstances with Ripple right here would have been more than enough cause to short this. And, the logical thing in a normal Ripple market would break down and it'd go back into the dirt, right? Well, that's not what happened. It just broke out again. And then, I mean, there could be a temptation here. I might play around with a short at these levels. It's possible. You got to be careful, but it did have a nice little bounce into the sweet spot, the sweet zone. So I could see a case. We've got volume, waning volume too, right? If I were to, but that's still. So usually what ends up happening is you'll have a dump and then a bounce play, and then it'll usually make like a weaker high, and then it'll roll over and eventually come back down to earth. But that doesn't necessarily have to happen. So yeah, the screen's being shared. That doesn't necessarily have to happen. So if I were to entertain, I'm not going to do this because I'm going to be away this weekend. So I don't want to be in a margin short position while I'm away and have to think about that. I mean, but if I were to do it, I'd probably run relatively tight stops, maybe at like 5%, right? And if it popped up above this fib level, 5%, then maybe I'd take a hit on that if I were to short it. And then I would, if it rolled over, I would hold it till it comes back down to the dirt, effectively, right? All right, I'm gonna do a quick look into some of the markets that I'm in. So ICN has been making a new high. Now a lot of these other coins and markets, they're kind of slow burners, right? They're not on the Poloniex list, right? They're not on Poloniex. Things on Poloniex end up rallying really, really hard. And so this market, I mean, the interesting thing with this market, and I think it was last week, someone asked me about ICN if they should sell. And I looked at it and I said, actually, if I didn't have any, I'd probably buy a dip here. you know, and I didn't because I have some. I don't. I have what I need in economy, but it could have been a good trade nonetheless. So, like I'd mentioned in today's market report, there's a lot of resistance in through this area. And we had an opportunity here. We did break out. When I'd sent out an initial trade alert a few months ago, we were breaking out of we were breaking out of this area right here, right? And then it popped off and it made a double. And I sold into strength when I sent out that trade alert too. I saw it was going up, it pulled off a double. I sent a trade alert before it dumped, and I said, okay, well, I'm gonna take some profit. So I took some profit off of the table, and then I added to taking more profit as it was breaking down, and then I just kept 50%. So let's see if this actually gets any traction. I mean, I've noticed liquidity. I've been noticing more orders on the books on both sides. So this is a little bit more liquid than some of these other thinner markets that we see on Bittrex. So this adds to the stability of it. And the interesting thing with a stable mid cap is that, if it doesn't bleed out or go up too high and then Bitcoin goes up, then that translates into pretty much almost the same as holding Bitcoin in a sense. Except in this case, it's actually gained a bit over Bitcoin. So it's gone up dollar-wise more, right? So that's basically it. Loon, someone's mentioning Loon. So nice. Loon is kind of, this one I think is a slow cooker. Although we are making a nice kind of double bottom here. I mean, there's not a lot of liquidity, right? So the TA is limited, right? But the reason why I bought this is I don't think the project is amazing or anything like that on a fundamental level. I just bought it for 3 reasons. One, it's a new project. And, I spoke to the developers on Skype, so I don't get the impression they're going to abandon it anytime soon. But, it's hard. They could still do that. Doesn't mean they're still not going to do that, but I doubt that. So it's a new project. New projects mean new tech releases, new news events. People are generally a little skeptical about this project right now, kind of like with Time. So it just means that the price is cheaper. So that's number one. Number two is that the price is cheap. Oh, and also with new projects, most crypto projects have at least one good bull run at some point. So it's usually just a patience game. Doesn't mean there won't be exceptions to the rule, and you might end up bag holding something now and again, but you have to just kind of base your position size. How you manage risk on these low caps is you buy low and you position size based on liquidity. So obviously, you would never want to look at Loon and say, hey, I'm going to put my entire crypto portfolio into this. That would be too high of a risk exposure, right? So, for myself, maybe 1% of my crypto portfolio or whatnot. I mean, that varies depending on your portfolio and so on and so forth. But, I've spread out between multiple low caps. But so there's some potential here once there's some news events and stuff like that. And number 3, I could stash it on a Trezor because it's an ETH-based token. So just pull it off the exchange, which allows me to be even more patient with it, because then if I want to sell it, it means I actually have to transfer it over and do that, right? And there's a process involved. It's not easily accessible. Time was a slow cooker as well, and it's finally starting to creep its head up above resistance. It's slowly, it's still not very liquid, but it's slowly making new highs. You know, we were accumulating between the $7 to $10 range. I think the ICO was $10. Then it dropped. There was some opportunity to scoop some up below ICO price. So, you know, I did that. I'm sure some other people did that. You kind of have these higher lows here. Right? So it's making higher lows. And the important thing is it broke out and it fell back down. It had a big correction because it's not liquid, right? But, you know, the prior resistance turned support. So we bounced off a prior resistance, established a new support level. You know, now that it's up too, it's probably gaining more dollar value. So, you know, starting at $7 to $10, now it's around the $20 mark. If it pushes up, then we can see it start to grow and market cap. And that's really what I'm waiting for. I'm just waiting for the project to gain enough momentum where people start to realize, because a lot of people were very skeptical about this. They're like, it looks kind of scammy, this and that. Some people were anyways. But, you know, the further along a project goes and the more people see a certain project serious, the more people get in. Now, here's the thing. When you're in accumulation, generally there's no liquidity, right? I mean, just as an example, you know, Bitcoin was going sideways in accumulation. It wasn't very volatile, and I think it was definitely more liquid too. But there's other markets that the best time to accumulate them were when they were the least liquid. So Ethereum would be a perfect example. The first year that Ethereum was out, when it was $1 a pop, the market wasn't very liquid, right? It had the liquidity of like a regular type of altcoin. Just because something's not liquid doesn't necessarily mean it's not a good buy. It just means that, because what'll happen is if this takes off and it goes on a bull trend, liquidity comes with the bull trend, right? So for example, you know, there's some markets, they didn't have very good, like Ripple didn't have good buy support. It wasn't very liquid. All of a sudden, Ripple takes off. Its buy support grows to over 1,000 Bitcoins. It's got more volume, blah, blah, blah. So liquidity, volume, and momentum are good for specifically for breakout trading, right? Okay, so we're getting some intel here saying Telegram groups started shilling time more and more in the last weeks, but we were the first. I love that. This is, I absolutely love that, right? I love hearing that because this is what I'm talking about. You get in early, accumulate, and let, you know, before the herd, let the herd go chase and push the prices up, right? Let everyone else do that. Now, of course, some people probably buy into things before us, and that's just the nature of the game. Depends what's on people's radar. You know, I've also been trying to help put this on people's map more and make people more aware that, hey, you know, this isn't necessarily just a fly-by-night project necessarily. But, you know, things change in crypto, right? I mean, it could end up fly-by-night. You never know. But Edgeless is another one, obviously. So this is all just review. And but, you know, my reasons, again, this is just actually Liqui's probably. You know, we had a nice move. You know, it bought down here, sent out an alert. It went up a bunch, kind of popped off a double, then crashed. And now it's just kind of going sideways. I wouldn't necessarily call this a bull run, you know. And just to give you an example. So this is just a new market finding price discovery, but I wouldn't call this like a huge bull trend or bull cycle, right? There's another side benefit to buying some of these you know, Ethereum-based mid-cap projects. One of the other side benefits, and I think, just to give you an example, I think I bought Golem at less than a penny. It was pretty cheap at the time. It's gone up considerably dollar-wise, but it's very, very cheap when I bought it. Um, so let me just give you an example why those things interest me, because there's also another possibility that if any one of those projects, if Poloniex decides to list any one of those projects, then that'll likely increase the price significantly on anything, right? Just like we've seen with Stratus. I got into Strat when it was only on Bittrex way back when. Then it got added to Poloniex and didn't get love immediately. And now look, now it's breaking out again. This thing's a beast. This thing's so vertical right now. Anyways, I got into Strat. The price was like down here. Yeah, it's being recorded. Right? And then it got added to Poloniex, and I think it did this, and then it didn't really do much. Or maybe it did this. And then finally took off with all these other markets. But the price, there just comes a point with some of these markets where I just have to stop trading them. Right? I mean, unless there's like immediate bounce plays and stuff, but for the most part, I feel like a lot of these markets are just too high for me. So I don't have an edge. Right now, you could play the breakouts on any of these, but you have to realize you're playing hot potato. You're playing hot potato. At some point the breakout will be a top. Right? And it could go up much, much higher. But the thing I'm noticing though, and when I look at Bitcoin, it's had this correction. I just I still think high cap altcoins are still way too comfortable with Bitcoin. There's probably because a lot of people are looking for the next Bitcoin because Bitcoin's too expensive for them. But I really think the real FOMO kicks in if Bitcoin breaks 2,000, when you get the multiples of the thousands and it starts to accelerate. So as long as altcoins are still bullish, as long as these high cap altcoins are still making moves like this, then it tells me that people still aren't really focused on Bitcoin making new highs. It tells me that people aren't really caught with the fear of missing out on Bitcoin, right? Because they're not holding Bitcoins in these markets. As long as they're trading and pumping these markets, they're not holding Bitcoin, right? I mean, they're holding some Bitcoin likely, but when you see big sell-offs and people all of a sudden sell all their bags to get into Bitcoin, that's when the Bitcoin FOMO is on, right? When altcoins are bleeding harder, altcoins are still way too cozy right now. And I think basically, I think a lot of the crypto traders, the veteran crypto traders, I think a lot of them kind of, a lot of us just kind of take profit and see that the markets are way too oversold and overbought and all this stuff. But we've got new money in these markets and they don't care about that stuff. They just buy. And new money comes in, they buy at any price point. So for them buying Strat at $1.30, it's like, meh. They weren't around when you could buy for 5 cents. So for them, maybe they're not even looking at technical analysis. They're just buying stuff. Oh, here's a news event. Let me just buy some. $1.30 a pop, right? So the markets are just, that's what they're doing. And obviously things can go up a lot higher than anyone anticipates. But at some point, even if you don't sell the top, at some point, you need to lock in some profit somewhere, right? Like I mentioned, there's a fine line between strong hands and bag holder. I think strong hands applies the best when you're trying to buy something cheap and low. When the prices are up 500+%, you sell at any point. No other market would you get returns like that would be considered normal. This is why we love crypto and trading, right? Golem obviously made a nice little bounce. You can see there the buyer stepping in, but I'm still holding. I'm still holding some of my original GNT position, but I'm not jumping back in for what I sold. And I nailed the exit on this one. This was good. I sent out a trade alert. The price was like, I don't know where it was. It was up here somewhere. I think it was like in the 17s or something like that. Anyways, so, and I just based that on a fib extension. So that's a good target, but I still have some because my cost basis is low. And with this cost basis, because I bought down here, I'm like, you know what, whatever. I'm just going to hold this. If it goes up higher, then I took some profit and I'll still make some money. And if it crashes, well, whatever. I'm just holding it. A little bit of diversification. I'm not going to lose money on it. I've already taken out, basically what I cashed out in profit was 5x what I put into it. And I still have half of that position. And I've already made 5x just selling half of it. That's how nuts it was. And this is why I see growth potential in other tokens, right? I mean, look at Golem. It's 11 for market cap, right? Augur, it's 12 for market cap. What other? Gnosis, 17 for market cap. You guys remember when Waves was in the gutter all the way back in mid cap areas? So the ones, those markets that I'm in, I was looking at WeTrust too. This kind of looks interesting. It's another ETH token. But, this was like 71 before. But you see, it has some growth potential, right? It could grow some more. It's by no means is it, I don't think it's too high, right? Necessarily. And Edgeless could definitely grow some more. And Loon is all the way in the gutter. It's not even on the top 100. Right? What was the other one? DataBits. Okay, so I'll just show you a little review for DataBits. Again, nothing terribly exciting happening in DataBits. These are markets that are just like, be patient. And those of you who've been with us for a while know this strategy quite well. We've done it with Classic. We've done it with other markets. So yeah, DataBits. Oh, no, sorry, that's not DataBits. This is just a project that Vinny Lingham invested in. I'm seeing some buy support slowly starting to grow here. Dollar value's been increasing. I didn't buy it down here. I was looking at it during price discovery, and then I kind of forgot about it. And then when it hit my radar again, it was more in this zone right here. So I was a little bit late to the party, but I still saw it had some upside potential. But for these, I'm not. I could say, okay, I could close this right now and make 30% or whatever, but for these mid caps, I'm going for at least triples, right? I want to go for triples at least, minimum. Okay, so you're saying that RLC is a project that's similar to Golem. Is it built on Ethereum, or what platform is it built on? Is that it's built on Ethereum? What's the abbreviation for it? What's the ticker? All right, let me just check this out. Distributed cloud that will power the IEX.EC network. Okay, so it's not necessarily an Ethereum based network necessarily, or is it? Anyways, I'll have to do some more research into that. Thanks for letting me know. I'll check that out. So generally the first thing I'll do is I'll check out the Bitcoin Talk announcement threads, just to kind of read up what the project is, check out the website, and see what people are saying about it, right? So I'll do some more research. Looks like it's relatively cheap, RLC. And then the next thing I do is I go over to CoinMarketCap. And it is 40 mil, which puts it kind of like upper mid cap. 52 cents. Okay, something to look into. So I'll just give it another, investigate it further. Let's take a peek at Litecoin just for fun. See what's happening. See if it's topping out. I mean, they've activated segregated witness. So now they're going to have fun with Lightning Network and all that fun stuff. So, there's definitely some evidence of some toppiness for sure. I mean, sellers step in, some red candles. If I were to do an extension, this area kind of just hit up against this area and then pulled back. Very big range on this pullback, actually. From the high to the low, 65% range. Okay, interesting. Keep my eyes on this. I mean, all these markets that are up really, really high, I'm definitely itching to get into some shorts, but shorting requires a lot more skill and risk. There's more risk involved, risk management, right? It's definitely not for, if you're completely new to crypto and trading, then you want to probably stay away from shorting until you have some more trading experience, because margin can get dangerous. But whenever I start to see these big sharp movements much higher, it could mean a top. It's a possibility. But these markets are fairly irrational right now, so it doesn't necessarily have to mean that either, because we also did make a higher low here, right? So it's something worth watching. I mean, I'd like to see like some head and shoulders patterns and stuff like that for more confirmation. NAV was a market that someone had mentioned yesterday in the room, and let me just show you how fickle the crypto markets are, right? So, oh wow, that bounced. Okay, so let me show you how fickle and irrational the crypto markets are. So, you know, NAV was up really high. I believe it was uh was it NAV? Wait. Oh no, sorry. Not NAV. My bad. I'm looking at the wrong market. Sorry. Nautilus. Someone was asking about Nautilus, and this is that's what it was. Yeah. And this is how fickle the markets are, right? And you have to be very careful with catching breakouts on illiquid markets. Yeah, it is. So this is what happened. So you got this potential breakout. It shoots up, and then all of a sudden the Nautilus Twitter says that one of their key employees died and that the project is no longer functional or whatever. And that's that. And then it immediately dumped, right? That's how fickle it is. But of course, because these markets are irrational, even though it immediately dumped, people still jumped in to trade it. Because at the end of the day, all you're trading are credits on an exchange. So at the end of the day, the fundamentals might not necessarily mean anything with the markets, but sometimes they're definitely tied and correlated, like this dump right here. So you have to definitely manage risk and be careful if you're trying to catch these breakout trades. But I just look at things that are up this much, and I steer clear of a lot of this stuff right now. It's a matter of time. We're just going to hit a full distribution cycle. So, all right, I'll stop the recording for now just to keep this video a little bit shorter. But I'll do a Q&A.